Last week, Trump declared peace in the Middle East, and Bitcoin liked what it heard, jumping nearly 10% in just 7 days. And now, with Bitcoin just 4% away from new all-time highs, the question is, what is driving the bid? The answer? The relentless buying from Bitcoin Treasury companies, stacking 4 times more than the network mines each week, unfazed by the volatility. But while Treasury companies are grabbing headlines, perhaps the biggest development may be in housing. The U.S. Federal Housing Director, William Poult, has ordered Fannie and Freddie Mac to consider crypto holdings when assessing mortgage eligibility. So we are seeing adoption across corporations, housing, at the street level. Everywhere, Bitcoin is grabbing a hold, and we are here to talk about it. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Huey Rattray, the CEO of Binance. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, Rob. How are you, mate?
Doing great. Yes, thank you for joining us. You are calling in from London, correct?
Yeah, from humid London at the moment.
Humid London.
Yeah, it's seriously unbearable right now.
Yeah, it's because you guys don't have AC, right? So you guys just got to grin and bear it.
Yeah, we got to get on with it. But it's like prime hay fever season right now as well. So it's kind of not a good place to be.
It's all just loaded on top of you. Well, yes, you are a busy man over in London because you are the CEO of a Bitcoin treasury company over there. So yes, tell us about Binance, aka the London Bitcoin Company.
Yeah, so Binance started in the middle of 2023, and we originally started as a Bitcoin miner, and we were kind of mining, pre-halving mining very successfully. And building a small mining operation where we don't own our facilities. We use hosting providers. We buy efficient equipment, which is not always top of the range, but always is profitable. When you factor in impairment and stuff like that. The beginning of this year, we decided to go for a listing on the main board of the London Stock Exchange, so the kind of most premier listing you can have in London. And we were kind of navigating the process with the FCA, the regulator over here, and the London Stock Exchange, and we were finally admitted on the 13th of January, I think our IPO date was. And in our IPO prospectus, we have permission to mine Bitcoin, and own Bitcoin-related assets or stocks. So we kind of pressed on with that kind of thought process, and about 6 weeks ago, we raised $4 million of institutional capital, which was a kind of convertible bridge funding in anticipation of our NASDAQ listing in a few months. And we announced a Bitcoin treasury policy there. And yeah, we started acquiring Bitcoin. And since then, we built up a stack of about 65 Bitcoin. We're kind of stacking pretty rapidly, and we're kind of continuing to look at the market and, go to the market for more capital. So we can kind of build that hodl and really become an established treasury company that institutions in London are comfortable with investing in, and comfortable that it gives them either tracking exposure to Bitcoin or can outperform the underlying asset.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you're a Bitcoin miner as well as a Bitcoin treasury company, and you are on the main board. So I actually have a video that discusses this, about the fact that there's all this money in London that can't get Bitcoin exposure, correct?
Yeah, we have no ETFs, no ETNs. Like, it's a very tightly regulated market.
How do you think this all plays out over the course of the
Sorry about that. Go for it.
No, you play. I can talk after.
Cool.
next 5 years or so?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It has to have a specific edge, right? So why is the UK so successful with these companies? Why have we seen a 100x already in Smarter Web company in 4 months that they've been listed? Well, the reason is that there's a 1.25 trillion pound pension pool that is self-directable in the UK that can't touch Bitcoin ETFs, right? So there is just huge demand from retail investors to get some exposure to Bitcoin, right? A lot of them, this is why MicroStrategy did so well, was because actually MicroStrategy was one of the few stocks that you could buy in the UK in the pension system under, SIP rules. I have a friend who he has a self-directed pension in Guernsey, and he was like, "Oh, Rich, what should I buy?" And I said, "Well, this was a few months ago. I said you should buy Metaplanet," and they refused to let him because they'd already realized that Metaplanet was a Bitcoin treasury company. But the UK-based companies, it's almost impossible for the trustees to say no. So that's the edge that they have.
Have you seen that clip?
I haven't seen that exact clip, but I mean, I know exactly what he's talking about, right? Like I know a bunch of our investors, who I speak to, are investing through their SIP, their self-invested personal pension pot, right? And that's a hell of a pool of capital. But I think when we look in the future, what we're thinking of is actually a much bigger pool of capital, right? There's London as a finance industry, so every fund in London and every brokerage and whatnot, they have the second biggest AUM in the world. And that's second to New York, right? So we have the most money swishing about here, ready to be deployed, and some of that money is deployed internationally, some of it's deployed in London. What the big opportunity I think in London is, and for a company in London to get to something like MicroStrategy size, these funds are mandated, to invest a portion of their capital on the London Stock Exchange. Some of them are 100% mandated to only invest on the London Stock Exchange, so they're long-only LSE funds, right? We want to provide a vehicle that gives those funds comfortable access to exposure to Bitcoin, right? And no disrespect to the kind of the lower markets that we have. We have a kind of OTC equivalent called Aquis, and we have a couple of other kind of private stock markets here. But the bulk of the capital in London is really LSE dedicated money, and that's what I want to capture, right? And it's not very difficult to get these guys on side. You just have to be a certain size with a certain stack of Bitcoin on your balance sheet, and you need to be reactive to the Bitcoin price up and down. That's really what they're looking for. Until there's a suitable ETF or ETN in the country, which we don't really know when it's coming at this point. There's various decision milestones that are happening, but in these big London funds will really be looking for something that can be a bit more dynamic anyway, and something that can outperform the asset. And I think that's where we come in.
Wonderful. Yes, exciting times. And you guys are right in the middle of this Bitcoin treasury craze, as we're seeing. And as we do every Monday here, we dive deep into our newsletter. Bitcoin News Weekly comes out at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday morning. And as you can see, we send it out to 10,000 plus people, and they get their whole entire weekly news of Bitcoin in one place, one quick download, 5-minute read. Boom, you get it all. You don't need to spend your whole entire life scrolling Twitter like we do over here at Bitcoin News. But yes.
I'll give people a tip, Rob. What I do, because I've been subscribed to you for a while, I actually just take a screenshot of the newsletter and then I put that into ChatGPT, and then I get an even more brief summary, so I can get exactly what's going on in like 30 seconds.
There you go. Yes, distill it down. But yeah, these are all the headlines that you'll need to know to stay on top of the news. And we are here. Bitcoin all-time highs in sight on the weekly, monthly, and yearly timeframes as Bitcoin treasury companies are unfazed by the volatility as they continue buying quicker than Bitcoin's network weekly output. So yes, we are seeing a huge bid coming up from these Bitcoin treasury companies. And as we're on our way down, check out this Bitcoin Wisdom. It is our new private list for a Bitcoin newsletter. You get to ignore fiat distractions, practice prudent habits, and grow your Bitcoin wealth. Head over to the newsletter, click there, get on the wait list, and join in for free. So yes, let's dive right into the news, and veering away from Bitcoin treasury companies for a second. Let's talk about BTC Prague. So this is Europe's biggest Bitcoin conference. It just happened last week, of course, in Czech. And at this conference, they processed 7,079 Lightning transactions totaling 0.58 Bitcoin, all through the BTC Pay server, demonstrating real-world Bitcoin payments at scale. So yes, did you happen to go to Prague?
I didn't make it to Prague just because we were closing a cap raise, and I kind of had to stay in London and deal with that. But I've been to Prague before, and yeah, it's a great conference.
Yeah, they seem to do it quite well. High signal there, very pure Bitcoin message. But yes, I mean, at these conferences, you get a lot of Bitcoiners all in one place, and you can get a lot of Bitcoin transactions going. So at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas that we were both at a couple of weeks ago, they set a Guinness Book of World Records for the amount of Lightning transactions in one day, with over 4,001 transactions happening within an 8-hour span at the conference. But over the course of, I believe, 3 days at BTC Prague, they got 7,000 Lightning transactions. So anybody who thinks that Lightning can't handle these amount of transactions. I mean, that's over $60,000 worth of goods being sold for Bitcoin. The Lightning Network is robust, it is strong, and it is ready to take on your payments. So pretty cool to see, and a great sign of real life Bitcoin adoption happening. Cool. Yes. And next we have Lightning Labs. They released Taproot Assets version 0.6, enabling stablecoins and other assets to be minted on Bitcoin and sent instantly over the Lightning Network, transforming it into a multi-asset network secured by Bitcoin. So yes, Huey, have you heard about this?
Yeah, I have read about this a lot.
This was the promise of Taproot since it came live in 2021, and it is turning Bitcoin into a multi-asset protocol, right? So Tether, of course, the world's largest stablecoin, they came out the beginning of this year and said that they are planning to issue Tether on Lightning, and now we are seeing it finally enter into the real world. So Taproot Assets is the first multi-asset Lightning protocol on mainnet, where assets like stablecoins can be minted on Bitcoin, sent via the Lightning Network instantly for low fees. This functionality enables the evolution of the Lightning Network into a multi-asset network anchored by Bitcoin security and decentralization. So, do you have much experience with sending stablecoins? Have you messed around with Tether and whatnot?
Yeah, of course. Like over the years, kind of gone through the whole Tether FUD that we used to live through, right? And kind of, I think stablecoins are such an important part of crypto, like because when it's a new asset class, you have this inherent volatility, and you sometimes do want to have not an off ramp, but somewhere you can kind of securely hold your crypto or your Bitcoin or whatever that doesn't have the volatility that the underlying asset does. So yeah, I think this is extremely bullish, right? And it kind of fits into the original remittance narrative that was the first most popular use case of crypto. And what this kind of definitely what this indicates to me is what I'm hearing. I've said this on a previous interview, so apologies if someone's rewatching. But what I'm hearing out of Silicon Valley is that this great engineering talent from the wider crypto space all funneling now towards Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's sucking all those engineers in, and they're beginning to develop and go and work for big Bitcoin projects and big Bitcoin initiatives, and they're starting to kind of develop really great tech. I think a lot of the engineering talent got kind of distracted by the wider development in the space, and they kind of left the Bitcoin network. But now we're going to see all this development happen on Bitcoin, all these great UX and UI enhancements. And yeah, I think that's going to last for 12 to 18 months. We're going to have a solid building period on the chain, which is so important, right? And that's how we bring making the user experience better is exactly how we get the next leg up and bring on board the next 10 million people or 20 million people or whatever the number may be. So that's one of the most bullish indicators that I don't see talked about a lot, right? Is what's being built on Bitcoin. And we want to see more of that, and we obviously want to see a whole lot more stuff happening here.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, if we just look at the chart here of Bitcoin dominance on the monthly scale, it's just been going straight up for over 2.5 years now, right? It crashed down to 40% at the nadir in November 2022 after the FTX collapse. But since then, Bitcoin's been the real show, and people have been screaming for alt season is coming, alt season is coming. Well, no, it hasn't. And it shows no sign of letting up anytime soon. Bitcoin is not only being dominant in the monetary sense, and the fact that it's over 65% of all of crypto is Bitcoin in terms of monetary value, but you're right in terms of engineering talent. People are coming back and realizing that a lot of this other stuff is just vaporware. Why are we wasting our time on these insider projects where these teams just pre-mine it, keep it for themselves, dump it on retail once they see a little price action? Whereas Bitcoin is decentralized, it is beautiful, and there's nobody with a pre-mine to dump it on you.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah. So very exciting news out of Lightning Labs. It'll be interesting to see the adoption of this, whether it can compete with is centralized chains like Tron, which are extremely cheap, but do have the problem of centralization and thus pose a security risk. Yeah, but it seems as if everything is coming home to Bitcoin. And in the last part of our adoption section here, so Ledger, one of the oldest names in Bitcoin hardware wallets, is phasing out the Nano S, urging users to upgrade and warning future support isn't guaranteed and will require re-entering your seed phrase into a new device. So this got a lot of people upset last week. So they put out this message here. Ledger is transitioning away from the Ledger Nano S, and Ledger Nano S is the most popular hardware device ever sold, right? There's millions and millions and millions of these out in the wild. And many people who were onboarded in the 2020-2021 bull run have kept their Bitcoin on there if they've never upgraded their hardware device, right? So they say, as a result of new applications, feature submissions, and app updates on the Nano S will not be accepted. We recommend you begin planning for this transition now to ensure continuity for users by warning your community that support of your blockchain, app, wallet, service on the Nano S is not guaranteed, and encouraging your community to upgrade to another Ledger device and check they have their 24-word secret recovery phrase to maintain support. So another layer to all this is that, of course, Ledger, when you buy from them, they get your details, they get your home address, your name, of course, and lots of other personal details. And people who had purchased from Ledger and had the device sent to them were receiving letters in the mail that seemed authentic from the company, supposedly saying that they need to upgrade their device and that there's been a compromise to their one that they have and that they need to enter their seed phrase into a new device. Well, it turns out that those were completely fake, right? And so now that the company itself is telling people that they are going to need to upgrade their device, get rid of their Nano S because it will not be supported moving on into the future, it opens people up to this type of phishing attack. So yes, do you have any experience with Ledger?
Yeah, I mean, I've used the Nano S personally in the past. I haven't done so for about 6 months now because I just moved on to something else. But I don't know. I love Ledger. Like, I think they've done incredible things for the space, and I think they're probably doing this for sure in the best interest of the Bitcoin community, right? There's no other real reason why they would kind of make everyone transition away like this. And yeah, I mean, I think most people, most people onboarded into crypto, like, I've always introduced them to Ledger or Trezor, all right? Like, I think I'm indifferent between the two, really, but because it does really make things quite easy and they kind of walk you through step by step. And yeah, I mean, people make mistakes along the way, and like, I appreciate Ledger for everything they've done. So I don't want to talk them down for this kind of move.
Yes. Well, I mean, some people are saying that this, of course, is a way to sell more units, right? New ones to make people upgrade.
I don't think so. I've met the Ledger guys, and I think they're very authentic, and they're hard. I don't know I don't know much about the company from like a corporate point. Like, are they raising tons of VC or whatever? I don't really know a bunch about it, but
no, I mean, they're wildly successful in this space, right?
Yeah.
And they've upgraded new things. I mean, as Bitcoiners, one would say for optimal safety, I would go with a Bitcoin only device. Trezor does offer a Bitcoin only hardware wallet, and of course, there's Cold Card, which is my wallet of choice there. But yeah, I mean, Ledger, I was onboarded via Ledger, right? And it's a very, very simple, easy process. And they have done a lot for the space in terms of getting the word out there, telling people the importance of hardware wallets, getting your Bitcoin off an exchange. But yeah, this was just an interesting development. And
I have the most kind of rudimentary technique now with my personal Bitcoin. I just have a whole different laptop which is completely offline and doesn't connect to the internet, and I have a desktop wallet on there, and that's where I keep everything, right? And then it's when I want to transact, I just very briefly connect it, send whatever I want to transact, and then disconnect it, right? So like, and I think that's kind of like understated how good a method that is. Really, you don't need to have a top of the range laptop, right? You can have one that costs a few $100 or whatever, and you just promise yourself and dedicate yourself to not using that for emails, for social media, or for kind of instant messaging apps and stuff like that. And that's pretty good security, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Going towards air gapping, yes. So
air gapping. That's the phrase.
Cool. All right. So that was the adoption section, and now we'll move on to legal. Big news out of the Federal Reserve. They will no longer use reputational risk as a factor in bank supervision, closing a loophole often used to deny services to legal industries like Bitcoin. So this was a big factor in Operation Choke Point 2.0, which was going on under the Biden administration, when after FTX collapsed, there really seemed to be a concerted effort by the Biden administration and Elizabeth Warren's anti-crypto army to try to go after the industry, put it in a bad light. And one of the main attacks was debanking and refusing banking services to companies that are completely legal, completely above board in the Bitcoin space, but they were denied services because of this reputational risk. So this came out June 23rd. Federal Reserve Board announces that reputational risk will no longer be a component of examination programs and its supervision of banks. So yes, it does seem as if after a long, cold winter, Operation Choke Point 2.0 is thawing out, and we are getting all of these Biden-era initiatives rolled back. So have you had any problems with banking, being in a Bitcoin company or anything like that?
Oh my gosh, we have like the worst problems ever in the UK. Probably globally, we have the worst situation here. I think even now, Barclays, one of our major banking providers over here, they've banned people from, individuals from transacting in crypto, i.e. from depositing to an exchange. Loads of banks have this issue. Loads of banks shut you down over here. And then being a corporate over here, we actually use a private bank in Gibraltar called Turcom, who over the years I've used before in previous crypto and Bitcoin projects. But yeah, I mean, it's just every now and then a bank will provide good services to crypto companies and Bitcoin companies over here, and then they will, and then they'll kind of rug those services and say, oh, we're not doing it anymore. And it's just, I think the problem is not necessarily the banks, like it's more the regulator behind them, right? And, they're kind of very wishy-washy on what's allowed and what's not allowed. TransferWise, I used to do all my business with TransferWise, like various companies over the years. And then one day, I had like 6 or 7 different accounts with them for different, I had a venture capital fund, and then, I had a consultancy company, and they all had different accounts, and they would all transact in some way or another, with Bitcoin and crypto. And then one day TransferWise just said, we're shutting you all down. And I was like, what the, like, you can't do that. Like, I was trying to pay out redemptions from my fund and stuff like this. And it's like, and they just rug it completely. And then, I had to find a new bank. Luckily, I was in Singapore at the time. So living in Singapore, so I got set up with Direct Bank Singapore, DBS, who are really good and really friendly. But it's not so much like, oh, we don't want to do crypto. It's when they say they do, and then they could do a complete 180 and say they can't do it anymore. And you're like, and you just, as a founder, you get left in such a lurch, and you're like, shit, like, and then everyone starts to get worried, and it starts to snowball. The snowball effect on, your business and your customers and your investors gets worse and worse and worse. And it's like, oh, I wish there was just someone who just, pinned their flag to, Bitcoin and crypto and just said, we're doing the business regardless, and we'll work with the regulator to get around anything else there. So yeah, that was such a rant, but it's kind of like the sticking point of being in the UK is like, oh my God, you can't bank anywhere.
It's really hard, man. I mean, to run a business, you need a bank account, and you need to count on it to be open. And so to just the mere fact that it could be shut down is enough of a scary point to have people not even start a business in the space, right?
Yeah. Even now, when we raise capital, and then we have to get the capital across from the investors to our bank, and then from our bank to our custodian, Fidelity, and it's like this whole process, and it's like days and days and days and days and days, and then everyone's like, oh, when are you buying Bitcoin? I'm like, as soon as I can. I'm trying really hard to get everything done. And yeah, it's frustrating because we're in an arms race right now, and you have to do everything as quickly as possible. But yeah, I mean, the only way is what we're doing is to just have backup providers after backup providers, right? And just use whoever's most efficient at the time.
Yeah, man. It's a lot of things to keep in mind. Absolutely. And well, one piece of good legal news, at least over here in America, the U.S. Federal Housing Director orders Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to consider cryptocurrency as a reserve asset in assessing risk for single-family mortgage loans. this was big news coming out last week, possibly the biggest news that sort of went a little bit under the radar, unless you're in the weeds like we are. But yes, the director, William Pult, he was on X.
Well, wasn't some random Twitter account that said, "Will you allow this?" And he was like,
Yeah.
"We'll take a look."
We'll take a look. And then Saylor came in and said, yeah, we have the whole entire way to judge the risk of loans when it comes to Bitcoin. Take a look at our playbook. And so it seems like maybe he had a chat with Saylor, but within 48 hours after that post, this was issued. And this is a big deal, right? I mean, Bitcoiners often will have Bitcoin for a certain amount of years, and then in order to make use of it, many of them will sell in order to buy a house, because this was never an option before. When you were being deemed eligible for a mortgage or not, they did not consider your Bitcoin holdings whatsoever. So now, if you have a considerable amount of Bitcoin, they will be say, okay, you're more eligible for this mortgage. As they say, you can't live in a Bitcoin, but you can use Bitcoin to help you live in a nicer house, right? And so this is huge, and I think it shows just adoption is spreading its fingers into every pore here in America's financial life. And it's hard to deny that this is just a really big step. Did you see this news?
I did see. Well, I saw the whole interaction on Twitter, right? And I thought it was so significant. And then saw this come out, and you're forgetting one thing: it's good for the price too, because people won't be liquidating their Bitcoin to do things like this, right? They won't need to. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? They have to be competitive, right? And there's loads of Bitcoin-backed loan providers, right? So who don't charge much more interest than your traditional mortgage provider, right? So the mortgage industry needs to keep up, right? If people are willing to lend against this asset class, they should be willing to lend too. And that's this is just legalizing that, in a way, I guess. So yeah, it's great, extremely bullish. Just another use case for the asset.
Yeah, and there's just so much news going on right now that it's hard to keep track of it all. But definitely one to keep your eyes on as to what is going on in the U.S. housing space and Bitcoin. And to round out our legal section here, Texas is allocating $10 million in public funds to create a standalone Bitcoin reserve after signing SB 21 into law. So they haven't purchased the Bitcoin yet, but they have set aside the $10 million to do so. And this bill not only authorizes the purchase of Bitcoin, but also underscores the state's commitment to integrating digital assets into its financial strategy. And so other states have passed Bitcoin reserves, such as Arizona, but that reserve is only composed of Bitcoin, which has been seized by law enforcement.
How much money do Texas have? I thought they were like the seventh largest economy in the world, or something like that, if you looked at them like a nation state.
Yeah,
I feel like 10 million is a poor show.
It's a start, all right. It's a start. And what's cool is that this is not some crypto reserve, right? This is Bitcoin only. And so by allocating public funds to purchase Bitcoin, Texas is signaling its intent to lead the adoption of digital currencies. This move could influence other states to follow suit, potentially leading to more widespread acceptance of cryptocurrencies at the state level. But yeah, I mean, the Bitcoin scene in Texas is extremely strong. You've got the world's largest miners there. You've got Bitcoin Park in Austin, which is a really great place. Highly recommend anybody in the area to go check out, with Unchained and Plub Lab and TFTC, and a lot of cool stuff going on over there. So Texas, between its energy abundance and its openness towards Bitcoin, definitely seems as if it is becoming the Bitcoin capital of America, and possibly the Bitcoin capital of the world. Have you been to Texas?
Yeah, my friend lives in Austin. My friend from university lives in Austin, so I went out there for his wedding. It was a really cool place. I loved it.
Yeah, it's a lot of people in Texas will say that Austin isn't necessarily part of Texas, but but no, it's an amazing place. A lot of cool tech is going on there now. A lot of people moved out of California to Austin during COVID, and it's a booming place. There's no doubt about that. Lots of cranes, lots of investment, and Bitcoin is leading the charge there. So very cool to see. And now let's head over to the markets. Bitcoin treasury companies last week added over 12,000 BTC to their reserves. This is nearly 4x the 3,150 mined over that same period. So yeah, I mean, look at, we've got all these companies, right? Here, hey, look, there's you guys, right? You're part of this. You're part of this trend. It's very cool to see, and this is the narrative that's taken hold. And the funny thing is, the question is, why, if they're buying 4x the amount that's mined each week, what is going on? Where is all the supply to feed these guys coming from? So let me get your opinion first. Why isn't price rocketing if these Bitcoin treasury companies are buying 4x the amount that's mined each week?
I don't know. I mean, there could be, some of the older kind of whale Bitcoin holders, seeing this as a liquidity point for them. This hugely increased volume, or new buyers, should I say? There's all these rumors that Coinbase is selling paper Bitcoin, but I'm not going to add any fuel to that fire at all. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get to a point where where there is a supply shock, and I think these things sometimes do bubble up, and you often wonder why there's been no dramatic movement. I mean, you have to remember we have moved quite significantly over like an 18-month period, right? Like it's already made a huge move, but I think it's going to be like a cold spring at some point this year where there's basically no resistance, between this level and kind of like 130, 140. I think the charters say, and yeah, it should race up there, and then at that point, the kind of wheels are off, I guess. There was a really interesting, I don't know if you watched this podcast called the All In Pod, and it's with like Chamath and David Sachs and co, right? And Chamath, the guy does his numbers and he sells them quite well, like he did on his SPACs back in 2021. But he was going through Bitcoin's performance, after the past three halvings, and if you take the average weighted performance, even just over the past two halvings, in the 18-month period post the halving, Bitcoin should theoretically be at like 500K by October or November this year, right? Like everything points towards a move like that. If history is anything to go by, we should get something significant happening, and it shouldn't really happen until kind of the end of the summer, or the beginning of the autumn. Like that's just what it's done. Like I said, if history is going to repeat itself, that's when the big move will happen, according to Chamath's calculations, anyway. So. Yeah, I mean, I'm still very positive about a huge move this year, and I don't think we're anywhere near done on this cycle. I don't know even if we can even say it's a cycle anymore, right? Like I think, maybe we're just on like a progressive uptrend, for a number of years now, like the kind of Nasdaq does. So yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there will be a explosive move at some point within the next 6 months. Just everything just lines up that way. And we are at this interesting psychological level, 100K. If you've been holding Bitcoin since it was under $100 and it reaches $100,000, that seems like a pretty nice place to offload some coins, especially if you've got a wallet that holds between 1,000 and 10,000. So yeah. got this little video here I'd like to share, of CNBC discussing why they think the Bitcoin price hasn't exploded despite all the Bitcoin treasury action.
Frank, yeah, we talk a lot about who's buying Bitcoin. We do not talk as much about the sellers. So yesterday, to your point about the flows, Frank, was the 12th session in a row of positive inflows for Bitcoin ETFs. Flows are on pace for their 9th positive week in the last 11. It's almost $4 billion for the month of June. And all of that underscores the strength of institutional demand that we've been talking about all year, even amid market uncertainty. And yet, Bitcoin is only up about 3% this month. We know who's buying Bitcoin ETFs and corporate treasuries, but there's a fair amount of selling taking place as well that's almost perfectly offsetting the buying and keeping the Bitcoin price stuck, and it shows a real change in ownership in the Bitcoin market. Now, looking at data from CryptoQuant, we can see that early mega whales, think Chinese miners around 2013, 2014, they've been holding onto their coins for longer and waiting to offload them in greater amounts to today's biggest Bitcoin buyers. We're talking about 3 different cohorts of Bitcoin whales. The smallest wallets hold 1 to 1,000 coins. That's institutions via Bitcoin ETFs. They tend to fall into this category, and they've been the biggest buyers this year. But if you look at wallets holding 1,000 to 10,000 coins, and then wallets holding more than 10,000 coins, they've been selling this year. And I'll also note that retail investors, Frank, have been sellers, but that cohort is a little bit too small at this point to be moving the needle on price.
Really interesting stuff.
So yeah, I mean, I think that was the really telling stat right there, is that wallets between 1,000 and 10,000 have sold 130,000 Bitcoin this year, right? So that's your answer, folks. I really don't think paper Bitcoin is to blame here, even though that's the common narrative over on Twitter X.
It's the bloody Chinese miners. It's always the bloody Chinese.
The bloody Chinese miners. But hey, man, good for them. They took a risk a long time ago, and they have had to deal with lots of off and on by the government itself, the largest.
China ban every 3 months.
Exactly.
And then we would unban it, and we'd all go up. But I remember in 2017, I can't remember like Chinese miner dominance, but it was high because there was a big worry about the 51% attack, right? Because it was all those guys. So yeah, well done to them for making a bit of money.
Yeah, well done to them. And I think it also just goes to show you sort of the self-corrective nature of Bitcoin, and how that when there does seem to be an imbalance within the market or the structure of the network, such as Chinese miners owning over 51% of the hash rate, it's sort of something happens and hash rate travels around the world, right? And now we've got American miners holding over 30% of the hash rate. And you guys are a part of that. You guys are you're mining over here in America, right?
Yeah, we've got a relatively small operation. I was just reading in your newsletter about the downtime. We had a tiny bit of downtime in Indiana, but we have a good system in place. That switches off and on depending on the heat wave in place at any one time. So we've been relatively unaffected. But our treasury business is day by day it's kind of beginning to make our mining business look smaller. But we find that the mining business is the perfect backup to the treasury. We slowly accumulate Bitcoin into our treasury via that method, whilst also raising funds and buying Bitcoin just on the market and quickly.
And it also means that you guys are a legitimate Bitcoin business too, right? You've been in this space for years. You know what cycles are like, and you're not some Spanish coffee shop with 10 locations looking to raise €1 billion. That's some news that just came out this morning.
I don't mind that though. And I don't think Satoshi would mind that, right? Like, I think it's great. Any company doing anything should raise money and buy Bitcoin. Like, I'm a complete supporter of anyone, no matter how irrelevant they are to the Bitcoin industry. I think everyone should, right?
Yeah, I think every company will essentially be a Bitcoin company at the end of the day, just as every company now is an internet company, right? You have to have a presence online. You have to have a Bitcoin treasury, and it's the prudent thing to do, especially if you have shareholders. You want to protect the value of those shares. You got to have a treasury that is not melting away like an ice cube.
Yeah.
Yes. And rounding out the market section here, CoinShares did a survey of 500 investors, including high net worth individuals, finding that 82% prefer financial advisors offering Bitcoin and digital asset investment support. What's funny about this is that the amount of financial advisors that do is way below this. I think it's roughly around 10% of financial advisors that actually offer any sort of digital asset support, right? And do you think that's because they're scared of it, they don't understand it, and do you think that's going to change very quickly?
I think it's just this kind of legacy opinion that the finance industry decided to have, that Bitcoin was very scammy and not legitimate, right? And I think these guys it's now taking them time to overcome the fact that they were just completely wrong about it, right? They can't overlook the adoption now that it's getting by, let's face it, the financial firms that, like BlackRock and Fidelity and whatnot, who are a tier above most of these guys, right? And now they're having to kind of welcome it with open arms, and I think they're just struggling to admit they were wrong, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got Larry Fink claiming the praises of Bitcoin. And then the big one that just came out on Friday was Rick Edelman. He has over $300 billion of assets under management. He is like the investment advisor face that people think of in America when they think of that. And he advises clients now, if they're aggressive, to go up to 40% of their portfolio in crypto. He says that the 60-40 stock bond portfolio is dead, and you got to go where the fastest horses are, where the money is flowing, and that is into Bitcoin and crypto. Yes. So yes, we are over halfway through this live stream, and everybody who is over there on YouTube, definitely, if you could go and hit a like, that would help out the stream a lot. And you know who also helps out the stream a lot? That would be our good friends over at Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino Bitcoin. They are super awesome, and we are very grateful for them to be the lead sponsor of the show. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. You can buy or sell your Bitcoin instantly, send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network, and withdraw straight to cold storage. On the app, you can turn your sats into gift cards. It's right there on the platform, or use a Casa multi-sig, all in one sleek interface. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon you'll be able to pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and stack for retirement without leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link below in the description over on YouTube. Use the code Bitcoin News and Rhino will drop $10 in free Bitcoin into your account today. So secure your stack with Rhino right now. And let's get back to the stream. Thank you so much, Rhino, for helping out. Yes, so Huey, in the next news I would like to go over with you, that would be about the Treasury section. So big news last week. We had big players coming in, people leapfrogging others on the Treasury list. But I mean, one of the biggest new players to come in, well, he's not too much of a new player. He's been in the space for a very long time, but he just came out with his Bitcoin Treasury company, and that is Anthony Pompliano. He announced a $1 billion merger to form ProCap Financial. They've raised over $750 million, the largest initial raise for a public Bitcoin Treasury company. And in 1 week, they purchased 4,932 Bitcoin. Pompliano was very proud of the fact that not only could they just do this merger, announce the raise, but then also deploy the capital. There's often a lag in between being able to announce the raise and then actually go out and buy the Bitcoin. But these guys over at ProCap have been able to deploy a lot of money, hundreds of millions, to buy 4,900 Bitcoin. And if we take
good entry as well, right? 103,000.
103. Sorry, say it again.
A good entry price on the Bitcoin.
Oh,
yeah.
Got that right after the Sunday news of the bombing raid over in Iran, and there was a little trepidation in the market, but Bitcoin has just gone up straight up over the last 7 days. And as you can see them right here, occupying spot number 13 with just a week essentially of existing, right? They came in and within 1 week jumped over GameStop, who's sitting on $9 billion in cash, just sitting there, not doing what they said that they would, which is invest.
Pump is such a good salesman, right? I just trust him to get so far up that list so quickly. If there's anyone that can go and sell that around New York and just globally in general, right, it's Pomp. He's done it for so many years. He's been a real gladiator for the space, I think. And yeah, I would see him significantly up the top 10, within just a few months, probably. You know how he works.
Yeah, I mean, 750 million. This comes out to what?
5,000, call it.
Yeah, 5,000 Bitcoin is 500 million. Is that? Yeah. I mean, they've still got 250 million plus to deploy, and I'm sure they're not going to stop there, right? And I mean, and just looking at this list, the other big news is that Metaplanet jumps up to spot number 5. These guys started just a year and a couple months ago, and now they are the 5th largest Bitcoin treasury in the world. And there was a little back and forth this morning between Saylor and Simon, the CEO of Metaplanet, and Metaplanet announced at number 5 now. Saylor comes back and says, "Get to number 2, and then we can fight."
That should be the traditional white collar boxing.
Yes. They're fighting over the position on this list. They've got a long way to go for that, right? They've got to multiple 10x their holdings to get there, but they've got a shot. They've shown true leadership in the space. Japan, like the UK, is a market where these Bitcoin treasury companies have an advantage in terms of allowing investors to get Bitcoin exposure where either tax treatment or investment rules do not make it as easy as places like America. So yeah, they seem to be really riding this up. And I mean, in the top 5, you got 2 of the biggest miners in the world, right? You got Saylor, you got Jack Mallers, and then you got this little one hotel treasury company.
I went after Vegas. I went to Tokyo,
Yeah.
and I was there for a week, right? And that company is like a cult out there. Like I bought a t-shirt and a cap I got it from the conference, and I wore it around Tokyo. And I went to various events and stuff when I was there, but I went to like a poker game. And all these Japanese guys and girls, and everyone was showing me their portfolios, and they're like, "Oh, I've got Metaplanet in my portfolio." I was being recognized in taxis, just walking down the street in like Shibuya. Like people are like, "Oh, Metaplanet," and I'm like, "Holy fuck! This is like, I want to have this level of like viral, this level of being viral that they have in Japan." You've seen the kind of the viral videos of their general meetings, right? When there's like 6,000 people queuing at the door. It's like a movement in that country. Like I really study a lot about what Metaplanet do, and the different facilities and structured products, and the options trading that he did, which was quite legendary, the whole selling the puts and getting the premiums and stuff like that. Like I think if there's anyone to kind of for Saylor to pass the torch to, not that he's going to die soon or anything, but if there's anyone that is a perfect second place to Saylor, it's definitely Simon and Metaplanet. Like they're just doing God's work there. It's great.
And what do you think it is that made it go so viral? I mean, of course, it was the best performing stock in Japan last year, which definitely helps. But I mean, are they doing anything in terms of messaging or marketing to really get into the hearts and minds?
I think it's quite similar in the way that it's quite similar to the UK Japan in the way that it's quite difficult for people to buy crypto. It's quite difficult for people to access, or there's not many products around that people can just buy with their pension money or whatever. So it's kind of the same sales pitch as the UK, and why there's been such a funnel of capital into Metaplanet is because of lack of accessibility for retail and institutional investors, right? Metaplanet has some great institutions in Japan on board now. And yeah, it's, Simon's proved over and over and over again that he can backfill his valuations with capital raises and buying more Bitcoin, right? And he compresses his MNAV, and then the market rewards him with a higher MNAV, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I just think it's a cool kind of rags to riches story, right? Obviously, it's, Saylor and MicroStrategy were a decent sized company before, but Metaplanet was on its back after COVID, right? It was completely, it was not in a good way, and he's turned this around to be just something so significant, for us Bitcoiners, and just generally an inspirational story. I think, if I can emulate anything like that, like what he's done, I can go to bed happy every night.
Yeah, it's a very cool story, and just in how short of a time that they've done it, right? It took Saylor a couple of years to really gain his mythical status over in American markets, but they've taken Japan by storm in a year plus. It's very impressive. Cool. Yeah. And so since you are a Bitcoin miner, I do want to go into the Bitcoin mining section here. So yeah, this weekend at around midnight, Sunday morning, Eastern time, the Bitcoin network difficulty adjusted, as happens every 2 weeks or so. And so we saw one of the biggest drops, I think, if not the biggest drop since the China mining ban in 2021, with the network difficulty going down 7.48%. So yes, I mean, there has been a heat wave in America over the last 2 weeks, and that can be a big reason why Bitcoin miners have been shutting down their operations. Many of these miners, the large ones, have deals with the power companies in order to, when they shut off, they are actually paid in order to do so, to lighten the load on the power network so that people do not experience brownouts or blackouts in their areas and things can function normally. And the amazing thing about Bitcoin miners is that it's not that big of a deal. You can turn off the machines and turn them right back on, and it doesn't hurt your business in any way compared to any other form of mining, right? But some on X were speculating that this significant drop in hash rate also coincided with the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities. So some people were thinking, "Oh my God, are they hiding Bitcoin miners within those facilities that were bombed over there?" So yes, you as a Bitcoin miner, do you have any experience with curtailment, shutting down your machines when energy usage is high on the power lines?
Not so much that, but we, like I said earlier, we were kind of susceptible to the heat wave going on, especially in our Indiana facility. Megawatts, our hosting provider there, and they're very good at switching things on and off so the machines don't burn out or anything. Yeah, like generally everyone's kind of refined their approach, so they're quite. I mean, I don't know what the Iranians are doing specifically, but in the US, the hosting providers, they've all been doing this for a lot of time, and they've been through a lot of different kind of mini black swans like the Texas power crisis and stuff like that. So these guys have a lot of expertise, right? And that's our mining operation is kind of dynamic in the way that we leave it to the hosting providers to make these decisions, and we just keep a bird's eye view monitoring what we're doing. But I still find the industry really fascinating, and I think mining is taking its fair share of whack in terms of investor sentiment and stuff like that. And you'll see, like with Riot and Marathon, right? Like I'm not sure what their exact MNAVs are if you look at their Bitcoin holdings, but they definitely don't get the premium that other treasury companies command, right? But yeah, it's just an interesting space in general, and it's very necessary for the network, right? So we can't talk too badly about mining.
Yeah, if you look at Riot's stock price on the monthly, parabolic in 21, right?
That was mining season, right? Everyone loved the miners back then.
Yeah, that was the proxy play, right? That was the way. That was MicroStrategy was still a baby at that time. There was no other Bitcoin ETFs or Bitcoin treasury companies, and so miners were getting a lot of that stock market money, that love from traditional finance, but they've had a rough go of it over the last 2 years, and it'll be interesting to see if Bitcoin really does make that huge run, if they will be back into favored status over the. But I do think a good sign that turn might be coming is the fact that we're seeing some capitulation here. Bit Digital, they played both sides of the coin. They were both a Bitcoin miner and an Ethereum staker. Well, they decided they're going to go all in on Ethereum. They're selling their 417 Bitcoin, exiting the Bitcoin mining business, and fully transitioning into an Ethereum staking and treasury company. And their stock was down 20% on the news that they were doing so. So yeah, I mean, it's these kind of stories that you see when markets eventually turn, right? People give up, they throw in the towel, and they say Bitcoin mining is no longer for me. Where those who are able to stay the course, go the distance, really reap the rewards. So Bitcoin mining is a brutal business, and my heart goes out to anybody who does it, such as you guys. I mean, it's hard, extremely competitive. The amount of Bitcoin you make every 4 years gets cut in half, and you just got to keep up with the energy, with the hardware, and the general market. It's not easy. And as you can see right here, Bitcoin miners face their lowest daily revenue in a year, dropping to $34 million in June. But that could all turn around very quickly, right? If Bitcoin does what we think it's going to do.
Yeah, we go 120, 130, then it becomes a very efficient business again, right? Like it's just as simple as that way.
Yeah. Yes. So we'll end the mining section by saying power to the Bitcoin miners. Run your BitAxe, run your home miner, and God bless those who run the big farms. And then switching over to politics, I think we can round out today's live stream talking about we've got some crypto laws moving forward. We've got the Genius Act passed the Senate last week. That's for stable coins. And then we have the Clarity Act, which gives market structure legislation. So it looks to be finalized in September, aiming to define SEC and CFTC roles and establish clear digital asset regulations. So I think this is just another sign that America wants to lead the way when it comes to global markets and be the one who defines the terms as to what is a stable coin, what is a commodity, which one are defined as securities. So yes, it's this isn't necessarily a Bitcoin law, but I think it bodes well for the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and any other Bitcoin initiatives to happen later on this year into next year.
Yeah, I think it's just generally good. Anything good for the rest of the market is definitely good for Bitcoin too. And what importantly the Clarity Act does is, like you say, it segregates the different tokens and protocols and stuff like that. And, it kind of aims to kind of basket these things, to be different things. And yeah, so Bitcoin isn't necessarily tarred with the same brush as some random other coin, right? Like, I think that's how we look at it as positive for Bitcoin.
Yeah, and the last piece of news I want to round out this live stream with is the Fed, right? So here we have Fed Governor Michelle Bowman signals that a possible rate cut is coming in July, noting that tariffs may have been a less significant impact than expected. With global rate cuts underway, pressure is mounting on the Fed to follow suit. And then you've got Trump coming out calling Powell a dummy, calling him stupid, and calling him politically motivated, thinking that we should cut, right? We should cut rates. They're too high. Inflation is gone. However, we've never cut rates when stocks are at all-time high, real estate's at an all-time high, crypto, Bitcoin is right below an all-time high. Doesn't make sense. Do you think that we should cut rates now? And what would that do to Bitcoin if we did?
It's gonna have a positive effect, right? Like, I think it will. And, I think Bitcoin is, if it becomes more reactive to news like that, like, I'm all for it, right? Yeah, I think I'm generally positive on that.
Yeah, Trump came out last night. I'll pull it up. He put out I
saw the tweet. It's such a good tweet. He's like, "We got to spend, then we'll grow." And it's like, it's like, I love it. I love that attitude, right? Like, I think, you have to take a risk, as an economy, right? In order to grow your economy, like, you gotta help everyone out. And, Americans do it best. Like, I wish we had that kind of culture over here, right?
Yeah, it's definitely balls to the wall. Let's just put our pedal to the metal and go crazy over here. Well, Trump actually says don't go too crazy, but he says that for all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember, you still have to get reelected. Don't go too crazy. We will make it all up times 10 with growth more than ever before. So yeah, this big, beautiful bill that they want to pass through would raise the debt ceiling by up to $5 trillion, right? And that would take us to over $40 trillion worth of debt as the national debt here in America. And so to be able to grow yourself out of $40 trillion of national debt, which is right now around 125, 130% of GDP, you're asking for a lot of growth. Where does that growth come from? Maybe the productivity gains of AI. I think that's what they're really banking on really hard right now. But it's hard to see how this goes anywhere other than a lower dollar and a higher Bitcoin price.
Yeah, you're quite right.
Yes, Huey. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a very pleasurable live stream with you. So if people want to find out more about Binance, aka the London Bitcoin Company, what you guys are doing, how to get involved, where should they go?
Just hit me up on X. My handle is at HueyBTC, HEWIE BTC. I can answer any questions, and I can then direct you. I think there's a pinned post on my X with all the links to our various channels and websites and stuff like that. So yeah, we're kind of an upstart treasury operation, only a few months old in that space, and yeah, we're growing rapidly, and we aim to keep growing rapidly, basically, and try to emulate some of the bigger guys, and I'm confident that we can.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for these Bitcoin treasury companies to be open with the public, right? To have the spaces, go on live streams like this, talk about your plans, where you see it going, how you're going to be sourcing the funds to get this Bitcoin. The more that you call your own shots, the more I think the market rewards it. So I applaud you for getting on spaces, doing things like this, and getting the word out about finance, man. Well, very cool. Thank you so much for joining. Before we go, we do have this. We do have a little giveaway that we like to do. If you answer the trivia over on the newsletter, which you can do this week, the winners are entered into trivia. The correct answer will be selected from this group of people who answered. So let's see who won. The winner will receive 21,000 sats. You get rewarded for being a part of this community. And the winner is Kohler 78276. So yes, we will reach out to you. Make sure you get your sats. But yeah, it pays to be part of the Bitcoin News weekly community. Well, Huey, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.